Hi, everybody, and welcome back to MIAC's Artist and Scholar Dialogue series, where MIAC staff and curators are speaking with different artists and scholars about their work, the impact the pandemic has had on their practice, and just what they've been up to in the past year. This is actually going to be the last iteration of the series, so thank you everybody for tuning in over the past several months, and thank you to the Luce Foundation for their ongoing support of this program. My name is Lillia McEnaney, and I am an assistant curator at the museum, and today we're going to be speaking with Virgil Ortiz. Virgil's incredibly innovative work moves between sculpture, ceramics, home decor, fashion, video, and film, and we're so excited to end this series of conversations with him here today. But before we start talking with Virgil, I'd like to briefly acknowledge the place where this conversation is happening, even though we are in a virtual space, in Ogopoge, within the Tewa world. As a non-native person living in so-called Santa Fe, I am a guest in the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people, and I wish to acknowledge all of the native folks, Pueblo, Dene, Apache, and so many others, past, present, and future, who walk on these lands and live within these places. So Virgil, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here today. To get us started, maybe for the viewers who don't know you, why don't we start with a brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Cool. Hey, Lillia, it's good to be with you today. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a part of your project. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I am Virgil Ortiz. I'm from Cochiti Pueblo, New Mexico. I work in several different mediums, with traditional Cochiti Pueblo pottery being the heart and soul of everything I do, and all the other different mediums that I work in, it all orbits around that.
Fantastic. So the first thing I really want to talk about is your artistic journey and kind of the fundamental ideas behind your work. So I think I can start screen sharing now, and then we can get going on that part of the conversation.
All right, cool. I was born into a family of potters on our mother Severina Ortiz's side of the family, and Guadalupe, our dad, was a drum maker. And growing up, there was art always surrounded us growing up, my siblings and I never realized it was art. It's kind of funny because it was like being created on a daily basis in our home. Our dad and our mom would be creating, I mean, their studio is basically our kitchen table, and I thought everyone's family did it, but but realizing they didn't is kind of funny. It was awesome to, because our mom would never force us to create in clay, but she always did invite us to join in. And like reminiscing, I could always hear her voice when I'm in the studio creating every day and working, and she really is the my biggest inspiration. All of her teachings and guidance and encouragement always played through my head while I'm working on pottery. And I figured out, like with her teachings, I figured out my life's path since I was maybe like 15. And I can share a pretty cool story of how that happened if you'd like.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, so like I said, like pottery was always being created on a daily basis. And one of our family friends, his name was Robert Gallegos, and he's a dealer, and he had a showroom in Albuquerque. So he would come to all the different pueblos, like on buying trips for his gallery. And he knew me since I was, you know, this small. And he would make buying trips to Cochiti like maybe 4 times a year, I guess. And he would always watch the different families that were creating with traditional methods and materials of all the Cochiti pottery and the figurative and pots that we created here. So he was kind of wondering like what family had kids that were going to continue it. And he had noticed that my work was, of course, I was making what was traditional at the time with storytellers, or the pots with the natural design elements on it. But I guess, I don't know, with me being a creative kid or something, I started making different types of figures and started painting them like with like how our mom had never painted them before. So Bob would always ask our mom, like, where is he getting all these different ideas? And like, how are you showing this to him? She's like, no, he's just experimenting. And we just give him our support, and which is true. You know, we had our parents 100% support in everything we did, whether it be in academia or art or whatever we wanted to do. But so he asked my parents, he was like, can you bring him down to our studio in Albuquerque? And at that point we had never been to a studio. So one day when I was about 15, and like I said, he'd seen me like when I was 6 years old working with my mom, right? But when I was 15, and that's when my style had started to change. And he had invited us to his showroom. So when we got to Albuquerque, went into his showroom, and my parents and I's mouths dropped because we seen all his collection. And it was just pretty incredible to experience this in person with my parents and with Robert Gallegos, because it turned out he had the largest collection of historic Cochiti figurative Pueblo pottery, and all the pieces that I was experimenting on looked exactly like them. So, we're just completely shocked by that because I had never seen them before. And at that point, my parents pulled me out of the showroom and talked to me and said, like, we want you to remember this day because, we didn't teach you any of this kind of style, or it's just pretty incredible. You remember it because the clay's speaking through you and it's telling you what to do. So, just remember it, and just like, the clay has chosen you to do this. So that's how I figured out my life's path was when I was 15. So I knew I was going to dedicate my life to clay, and also to tell the story and educate the world about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, because nobody has heard about it, and it's basically been swept under the carpet because of the genocide that has happened to our people. I mean, it's not in our history books, in our, in our classrooms. It's not taught normally, but that's when I knew that was my path, was to educate the world using my artwork, and also mainly to carry on the making and creating of Cochiti Pueblo pottery using traditional methods and materials.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love the way that you described, like, the clay has kind of chosen you to tell this story, and that's just an incredible experience to have at 15. So thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, you just started talking about the Pueblo Revolt. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you are looking to use your art to educate folks about the history of Indigenous people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I tried to figure out, because I'm not an academic person. I never went to higher education besides high school, because I already knew my path. So I was just gonna stick with that and completely, that was my vibe since I was a kid. So I had to try to figure out how to educate the world using the artwork. And I said, okay, what was, like, reminiscing when I was a kid, what affected me the most growing up? And it was movies and TV shows all dealing with sci-fi, right? And I remember seeing, like, during the Indian market time when Star Wars, the original Star Wars was on, it had a big impact on me, because I remember my cousins and my family would go to the Vargas Center and watch the movie all day. And I was only 6 years old, like, or 7 years old when the first Star Wars movie came out, when it dropped. And I remember, like, remembering all the characters, how they looked, how they dressed, like all their costumings, how their ships looked, where they came from, all that. And I was like, man, like, I it just, like, fed my brain, and I learned everything about these characters. So, and of course there was, like, Star Trek, and now what is out there, like Black Panther and the Avengers, right? So all these superhero character movies are really they impact kids growing up. And so I said, okay, this is, like, the path that I'm going to take. So I've been writing a storyline using telling the story of the Pueblo Revolt that happened in 1680, 2 different time dimensions, and 2180, and combining them simultaneously happening, so that it allows me to bring in the sci-fi storytelling aspect of the revolt, which allows me to affect or get the attention of the younger generation, as it did when I seen the first Star Wars or Star Trek movies, right? So this is how I created it, and I've been doing it for over 2 decades. Like, that's a long time, like, time flies. But this is how a lot of people don't understand, like, okay, like, you work in this medium, photography, jewelry, costuming, models, clothing, all these different things, and clay, and you see all these different sci-fi characters or aliens and stuff, and it's hard to explain to them unless I have a couple of images. So I thought it would be kind of cool to show you guys how it all fits together, because all these different mediums work together to tell the story of the revolt. So that was exactly my question, is, like, how to educate the world about what happened to our people. And what will capture the next gen's generation. So here it is, like all the design work. You could go to the next slide. All the design work that I did, I had developed all these futuristic characters. I designed 19 specific groups of characters that represent the 19 pueblos that are still left in New Mexico today. So when you actually would go back through all of the different presentations or gallery shows or exhibitions, then I released a new character each time. So if you've been following what I've been doing, then it's all going to make sense, because you're like, oh, okay, now I know the blind archers, you know, I know the Castilians, the aeronauts, you know, all these different characters, how they all start coming together to tell the story. Next slide. So it's just, it combines everything. I wanted to create the main heroine character, a woman, and just to, you know, stand up for women empowerment, equality. And this is who I came up with, and her name is Ta'u, leader of the blind archers. So this is like how the beginning of the storyline starts, is when the invaders first got to our area. All of these blind archers were kids, and they were practicing archery taught by their grandmothers, who were ace archers. And then the Castilians come and see how good they are. So they challenge them to an archery contest, and the little kids kick their butts. So they get pissed off and in turn blind all those kids. So this is like how the whole storyline starts. So there are many battles before the big one of 1680, right? So by the time they got pushed out, the invaders, the first time, and then they come back again, and this is how they started, like when all the bloodshed started happening, the genocide, all the, you know, imprisonment, and having all the natives build churches on each pueblo. And they finally had enough, and at that time that they had to plan a revolt of how to get him out. And it was Pope, he was from Okewenge, so he devised a plan for the Pope revolt, and he had released runners from the northern pueblos to the southern pueblos, sent them with knotted cords, like yucca or leather cords, and gave it to the heads of each of the pueblos and instructed them to untie one knot every morning. So when the last knot was to be untied, and that's when all the pueblos rose up and pushed the invaders out. So, but in my storytelling of it, like I wanted to have a heroine that was a woman as well. So it would be Pope's sidekick, and this is Ta'u. So when the 1680 revolt comes up, she stands up, and all of her crew that had got blinded as children, they're all ace archers, yet they're blind. So this is how, you know, like a lot of people recognize all the blindfolds and all the imagery that I do, whether it be on garments or characters like this. And that's who she is, and that's who she represents. So that's her superhero power. Her crew is like, they're all blind, but they're all ace archers. So I was thinking of all the different, you know, little girls in the pueblos. They needed like a superhero character to look up to, and this is who she is. So this, like, the whole storyline revolves around Ta'u, and Ta'u is what, like, our grandmothers and the granddaughters address each other's so on a daily basis, right? So like if there's big gatherings, you hear Ta'u, 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 like all this, you know, the conversations going on. So I thought that would be the best name for her, just Ta'u. So this is who she is. The next slide. So it's like, as soon as I started writing the storyline, like 2 decades ago, I wanted to really develop the characters as much as I could and fully as I could, like taking in all the Star Wars movies and Avengers, like I mentioned earlier. But I loved like body painting and really, you know, inviting my friends to my studio so that we could develop these characters. So we do full body painting, and you know, all of the tattoo work started coming in, and I had taught myself to work with Photoshop. So I tried to develop it as much as I could so that they keep their integrity of like how they look, what they're doing, the type of language they speak, or, you know, weapons that they use. Next one. But all our our friends and family always love to do this development of the characters. And this is an example, like when the final image of translator's like kind of like a Yoda kind of character, and he resonates and lives in the universe, but like can go back between the spirit world and the current world, what we're living in right now. And he helps Ta'u pull off the the Pueblo Revolt in the future. So this is one of the main characters, which is now iconic with, I think he's been on like in the Albuquerque Museum, like 2 stories high, or if I forgot how big he was. Next one. But now that everybody, like all the different schools or workshops or universities that I do residencies at, or have the opportunity to work with the professors and the students, it's really awesome to get into, getting them on there to model, and like having them finish some of the costuming with me and do installations at different museums, so that they get the experience of working with, say, a curator or the installers or the directors, and just like shows them like, yes, these people are approachable, and like you just have to ask for what you want and learn how to talk with them. So these are some examples of the different students that came along the journey with me. Next one. So it's really fun just to take and let loose all the different mediums that I work in, and let them inspire each other, which, I'm never bored, like having ADD all over the place, right? So like a lot of the times sometimes I'll sketch on paper like the design of a character, and sometimes I'll make it in clay first, and then I'll capture them in on a live body, on a model. Or sometimes it happens the other way, where I like go directly to a model and design the costume, sew the costume together, do the body paints, photograph them, and then once I have the photograph of the character, then I create it in clay. So it's always just bouncing off of each other. So these are examples of how the clay influences the models, and vice versa. Next one. So more examples again of how and what Cochiti Pueblo figurative pottery were based on in the late 1800s. It was all based on social commentary back in the day. So like when the railroads were being laid in the area, it brought more people. So along with more people, then entertainment came, like operas or the circus sideshows, right? So me not knowing anything about like pieces from the 1800s, or my family, a lot of people from Cochiti, right, didn't know about these figurative pottery. But once I had the access and resource that Robert Gallegos provided, I was able to go and study all these different characters, how they balanced them, how they painted them, and their size were like over 3 feet tall. So at Cochiti, I've never seen pieces being built that big. So making that connection when I was 15, I was like, okay, this is what I have to do, and to revive this style of the figurative pottery making and social commentary. So all of the different characters, like a lot of people say like, oh my God, you're innovative. And I'm like, no way, you should see the pieces from the 1800s. Like those blow me away, and everyone that would see it. Like, they're like, whoa, I never knew like, Coaching people make these pieces. So like they're basically caricatures and a timeline of all the people that were being brought into the area. And so you'll see all these really cool circus sideshows, like tattooed bodies and, Siamese twins, and all basically the different sideshow kind of funny characters that you see in an old school circus. So these are some examples of my interpretation of bringing them back to a current timeline. Like say the middle image is like, if I were to design a cirque show, I would love to design everything about it, the whole storyline. And of course it'll be about the revolt, right? And also like the garments and all of what the performers wear. So these shows like the evolution of when it came from historic circus sideshow characters to say circus characters. The next one. And again, like to go on location, we shot this at White Sands. And this is just another example of how these characters are called the aeronauts, and who they are is us in the future. So they're coming back from 2180 to the current timeline, and also to the past. And what their job is and what they're doing is to collect artifacts and shards and designs and songs or ceremonies, take them back to the future, store them, protect them, so that when we get to 2180, all of our designs and our ceremonies, our way of life are all protected, and we still have our traditions. So when you see these characters, like they're not aliens, these are us in the future. So, and again, it shows like exactly how I use it to do or paint graphics onto the pots like this. So now I think you guys are getting exactly how all the mediums work together. Next one. And this, I mean, like I've had a chance to work at the Wrights Ranch, the iconic Wrights Ranch with Don Wrights out in Arizona. So I started working with wood firing. So it just really, the wood firing process like blew my mind, because it's so, I mean, it's like a 7-day period to fire it, and there's no glaze on it. So all the wood ash and all the atmospheric firing just creates its own design. So I wanted to really, when I first went into work at Don Wright's studio, he passed in maybe 2015, I think, but um, I had went in there and I had said prayers. I introduced myself, I stated my purpose, and asked permission to come and work in his studio, and to really guide me in like his style of pottery making, because Cochiti is all, we have smooth surfaces because we decorate with the fine line painting and all. But to work with something like how Don Wrights worked, he relied on very textural and like cutting and just very like really rough with with the clay, and I had never worked that way ever. And so that's why I was asking guidance from him, and these were some of the pieces that you could see on the website, and like the storylines behind each character and how they fit into the whole storytelling of the 1680 revolt. But this type of wood firing completely looks like it's ancient, or or it looks futuristic as well. So it fits in that whole genre of how I'm trying to combine taking the past, the future, the present, and tying them all together. So this is, and again, like using Photoshop and making the characters come alive and trying to design them as much as I can. So yeah, that's kind of a roundabout of how the clay started and how how I'm at where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I really appreciate you explaining how all of the different mediums come together and all of the different time periods that you're working in. And I understand when you say you're never bored. I can't possibly imagine you ever being bored with all of this going on.
It's kind of funny because I mean, when our parents were still here, we lost our mom, Sabrina, in 2007, and our dad in 2015. And every time they wake up, I had moved back to Cochiti to be with them and to just make, just to spend as much time as I could with them. But it was just funny because they always come over to my house and they're like, "What are you working on today? Like, are you sewing? Are you drawing? Are you painting? What's going on?" Like, it's just kind of cool to have them see how it's all developed, and like, through their encouragement and teachings, like how it all developed, and how clay has now taken me around the world, and my whole team, and just really using this platform to educate the world about the revolt. So I just always remember our parents teaching us all that, and it's just very rewarding to see how they reacted, their smiles, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just love the idea of Pope having a female sidekick. I think that's just so fantastic.
Yeah, it's important, for the young women in the Pueblos, and women in general, that they need to be held up to higher regards as they were before, and they need to be protected, and their stories told, because they are the backbone of our society. And they always, my mom would always be nudging my dad, like, you're supposed to do it this way, and like it's just kind of funny because they're the ones that keep a lot of everything all together. They're the, they're badassery. Let's just put it that way.
So I think we're at a good point to switch gears a little bit. I know you have a few specific projects that we want to talk about today, and we will be doing a brief studio tour at the end of our conversation. But I think maybe we can start talking about MIAC's upcoming exhibition, Clearly Indigenous,
Yeah.
opening at the museum on May 16th. So can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in that exhibit and your work in glass?
Yeah, like again, like when I try to any chance that I get to work with a new medium, like I jump at it. And the Corning Museum of Glass, through the Rockwell Museum, had invited me to do a residency at the Corning Museum of Glass. And of course I jumped at it because I've never worked with glass before in my life. I didn't know what I had no clue what glass was, but that whole idea intrigued me so much. And we did pre-visits, and I got to view all their, the new addition to the museum that they're creating out there. So my job was to design glassworks because I was going to work with a set of their whole professional glass blowing team. And for these pre-visits, I was able to blow glass myself. So that was really awesome. And it reminded me of pottery making, because they're both fired to like 2,300 degrees. And so then I had to go, once I designed these pieces and challenged them of like just how to make a piece, and like to work with a whole team of maybe 8, because it takes a team that big to make one piece in glass, right? It was amazing to work with them, because it's all like mind telepathy, because like working with something that's that dangerous and that hot, you could get burned right away. But so one person would be over there making one leg, one person would be over there making another leg. So they're all just kind of like nodding to each other, and they all come together, and the glass is spinning. You have to keep it going on the, I don't know what they call it, the blow tube or something, but where it just has to be stuck to one piece. So it's just continuously moving, like, which reminds me of people when they use a throwing wheel for pottery. When you're watching them and directing them how to build this piece, like, you really want to touch the glass, but we all know what will happen if you touch the hot glass. It's so cool to watch them. But here are some of the examples that I worked with the Corning Museum of Glass team. So the next slide. And like, I went through their whole collection, and they told me to look at what type of style or what the colors that you wanted to work with. And so I was writing down, taking notes. I was like, I like this color of yellow, I like this color of blue, this color of purple. But what I wanted to do was to combine it with ceramics, high fire ceramics. So these are some of the samples of the different characters. Again, like the left one is a Castilian, the middle one is an aeronaut, and the right one is Tao in 2180. And all of the toppers are ceramic, but like in the middle piece, the aeronaut has an arrow attached to it. So all of that is ceramic. The Tao on the right-hand side has leather cords hanging down. It has one knot on each cord. So of course, going back to the story of how they pulled off the revolt, that's what that means. Like, it's the eve of the revolt on that piece. The next slide. This is Translator, the character that I spoke about earlier. And this piece you'll get to see in the studio tour. I have it here at the house, and it's one of the bigger pieces, and it looks like a spaceship. And it's like, I loved it when they had it in the museum, because when they lit it, it just sent blue prisms all over the place. So it's pretty cool. And it's just I mean, glass is so alien to me, so I thought that'd be perfect to fit into, say, like, if in a scene, or say if they were in a house, like in the future, what would these characters have on their table? Like, like, what kind of art would they have in their whole environment, right? So these are a lot of the design work that I would imagine would fit into the storyline. The next one. This is another character. His name is Devin, and he's the leader of the Nevid herd. But in my storyline, we really interact with a lot of the animals, how most of the Pueblos, as far as I know, do. So like, we have deer dances, ram dances, elk, antelope. So they're important animals in our tradition. So this is a representation of, like, a horned animal to it. So we had the canteen and designed it to have horns on it, and at the lip of the canteen, and that's where I inserted the ceramic head into it. Next one. And this is one of the pieces. It's called this pair is called the incubators, and it's one of the pieces that are at the clearly Indigenous exhibition. And these are what they are. They're incubators, but this is like how the aeronauts in the storyline, how they reproduce. They reproduce as twins or triplets all the time, because they're always in heavy battle. So they learn to build themselves in triplets, right? So when they're fetuses, they drop from the top, their test tubes, and then they drop into these live incubators. So the incubators catch the fetuses, then they grow them till they're like 2 years old or so. So I just thought it would be perfect to have this type of the incubators and then add like the tentacles that look like they're liquid and moving. But these are some of the tentacles that are made in glass at the Corning Museum. So and like shooting at the white sands, I thought was a perfect background for it. It looks like it's snow, or can't tell where it's at, but very futuristic looking. So it worked perfect with that. Next one. This piece is also at the MIAC now, and the funny story is it's Ta'u from 1680, and the funny part about this was when I was picking out the colors that I wanted to work with while I was touring the museum, I was like, I definitely want this shade of red. I want to do this like for the main character. So when it came time to regroup and go back into where they blew the glass, they all started laughing at me. I was like, what? Why are you guys laughing at me? And they're like, okay, this is, you picked the most expensive color of red to work with. So I was like, I had no idea, right? So and I guess evidently has like pieces of gold in it. And I said, of course, like leave it to me to pick the most artisan or most expensive material to work with. But it was fitting again for a woman and for the character to be placed on that. So this, a lot of the pieces that you see, I just kind of wanted to do little 3D version and adaptation of the 2D paintings that we do on our pottery. So like the handles are idea of the wildflower design that you would see painted in my pottery, and just the fierceness of all the different types of the feet of the piece and like the horns and stuff. Just it makes me feel like that she's a badass woman again, which she is. So yeah, you'll see that at the MIAC exhibition.
Fantastic. I can't believe that glass is new to you. It looks like you were born to working with glass.
It was really awesome too. Like, like again, I did pre-visits with the whole team, and I had to send them drawings and sketches. But when they're blowing it, like I had a big piece of paper that I was standing next to them. I was like, okay, they're like, that's not gonna work. So I had to go change the design really quick. And it was awesome to be a part of that. I hope I get a chance to go revisit them and work with them, or somebody like Preston Singletary has helped a lot of the Indigenous designers and artists are like mind-blowing. I mean, I was supposed to work with them a while back, and I just know our schedules didn't meet up, but I hope that will come together again so that we get that opportunity. And I mean, he's brilliant, and I really thank him for what he's doing and providing the opportunities for other artists to experiment and work in clay. It's just amazing what he's doing, and I give him like props. And he's awesome. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see your different visions for the same character, like comparing kind of this work of Tahu with the one that you showed earlier on. It's just fascinating just to see kind of the way that you envision these characters in all of these different and new ways as time goes on.
So cool. I'm excited. I'm glad to share this with you guys. And again, like it's easier to see visuals of how to explain how I'm putting all this together and what it means. And like the whole going back, I just stick to that since I was a kid, since I was 15, and always sticking to that same topic of knowing that I have to revive these pieces of the historic Cochiti figurative pottery that were made based on social commentary, and also to educate the world about the revolt. So just taking those two topics and always remembering when you see anything that I do, that's what it all revolves around.
Absolutely. Great. So I would love to start kind of talking about the past year or the past 14 months at this point. Obviously, the pandemic has changed every single part of every single person's life, but I'm really curious just to hear how your work has adapted, or the way that you're thinking about your work has adapted over the past year.
Yeah, it's been a crazy time. Like when it hit, I was in residency and teaching at ASU in Arizona, in Tempe, and I was supposed to be there for the whole year. And of course, like in March when it started happening, like I was working with a lot of the students that were seniors, and all of a sudden their shows started getting canceled, and they've been preparing for a long time, like their presentations, their sales, their shows and all that. And it was like really heartbreaking to see them freak out about it. But you know, me being a mentor while I was there, I was like, okay, you guys don't, I mean, I know it's really bad, but we have to go with the flow and we have to learn how to adapt to it, because like if you're choosing to live your life as an artist, you better get used to life throwing you curveballs all the time and learn how to adapt with it and march on and move forward, because it will happen. So taking that, you know, experience, I said, okay, like most of you guys don't have websites, so now is the time that we're forced to develop our websites, and let's go take this as a learning opportunity. So once we went online, I was able to interact with them in person. Then we just started. I started showing them like how my team operates and how we pull together images and how we have to write stories and explain everything about uh, any kind of sales that you want to do online. So that was my opportunity to say, okay, this is what we're going to do now. Don't freak out, like do this, just adapt to it, and like you'll get through it. It's going to be okay. And it was awesome because a lot of them like started to breathe again. They're like, okay, you know, we're not, you know, it was just like really crazy to see how it affected them. And of course they're young, so I was like, just was there to give them confidence and like the, you know, the encouragement to move forward, just as like how our parents all did to us. So we started moving on. But like, you know, working and being in lockdown and, you know, in isolation, I was very lucky that it didn't really affect me that way, because I've been used to being in my clay cave since I was a kid, like in my studio. So I'm used to being in isolation all the time. So it on that part it didn't affect me, but I just wanted to help the students say, okay, this is the time to regroup, to replan, and to really, you know, dive into your artwork and create as much as you can, and just, you know, take advantage of that, of the quiet time when we have to be in isolation. So at that point, like, you know, I just wanted to help them like think more, to have positive vibes and energy around it, and to, you know, you develop it and use it for them.
Yeah, I mean, your students are very lucky to have had you during that time. I can't even imagine.
And I learned so much from them. Like it works both ways, but I, you know, I tend to get so much inspiration from what they're doing because they're fresh and they're, you know, they teach me so much too. So I love working with students and with universities.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a little bit that art has been kind of like therapy for you during this time.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that? And
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, when you think back, you know, I'm surprised I haven't went to to hire a professional to go talk to, right? My whole life. But yeah, I mean, it's because like of how our parents had taught us. So like when we go dig our own clay, like we, you know, use all the natural materials, old school style. And we, before we dig into Earth Mother, we have to again introduce ourselves, ask permission to do it, state our purpose, you know, because we're gonna dig her up. So we take only as much as we need, and the whole time we're saying prayers. So like, so different when we're gathering the different types of materials that we get from different parts of the pueblo, we have to be respectful of what we're doing. And then when we get it home, it's the same thing. I really take care of those materials because they're not mine to begin with, you know. She lends them to us and to help us in our lifetime. So when I get all the materials together, finally I'm sculpting in my studio. Like I'm always listening to music as well, so music is therapy too. But when I make it sculpting a piece, and I make using it the pieces using the coil and scrape method, so it takes me a little bit longer, a hand builder. And at that time I'm always praying, remembering what our parents had taught us, and you know, thinking about our community, all the people that have been gone, like hopefully that continue it to work in the clay. But there's always prayer going on. So this is how I use it as artist therapy, and it saved my life. You know, it kept me out of trouble. And you know, everybody that I tried to invite over and ask them if they want to learn how to work in clay and to, you know, be a part of it, you're always welcome to. You know, I'm an open book, and you know, all of this knowledge has been given to me freely from who knows how long back. So that's my job, is to continue it on and try to make it exciting, because like it's a lot of work using the old school methods. like, of course, people have jobs to make a living, so they don't really have the time to dedicate to using these traditional methods and materials. So it's really, I see it trying to make it exciting with, that's why I have all these visuals and the different subject matter that I create, and try to make it as exciting for them as possible. So hopefully that will register with them to inspire them to pick up clay and work with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely exciting. That's a mild way to put it.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's just incredibly inspiring. So as we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, fingers crossed a little bit,
Yeah.
people are starting to get vaccinated, and there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And you mentioned coming out of the pandemic fog, and where you kind of see the world of Native art moving.
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity because most of us that do normal shows in museums or galleries and stuff, like I myself have like 5 shows canceled because of it. But it allowed me again to really think about what that, some of the shows are still going to go on in the future, but some of them just got purely canceled. But I was able to take the work that I was working on and to develop them even more. So I already have more work to be presented in the future at some time. But it's just like it's a chance now again for us to like regroup and just to think about what has went down. Like we're living through a pandemic, and hopefully I mean, I was very thankful for our Pueblo and our officials, our leaders, that how they took it so seriously at the beginning of the March. When I was working in Arizona, my sister and my nephew that live here on the Pueblo, they had messaged me saying like, you can't really come back right now because the Pueblo's completely shut down. It's like, there's a checkpoint, and it's only the residents that are from Cochiti that are allowed to be in here. So after I had worked at Wright's Ranch from like, I think we shut down completely, and at ASU like in probably close to the end of March. So I was able to leave, and I just went up north because the Wright's Ranch is close to Sedona. So I was able to go there and create, because that whole ceramic center had closed down to its members and to the public. So I was just only myself and one of my students that I worked with at the time we got invited to go create there. So we had the whole place to ourselves along with another resident artist that was there. So we took advantage of being isolation there, and we just created. And I finally came back to Cochiti like in July. And, that was the time when it was like a hard time to get tested. And so I was lucky that I had called our head officials and asked them like, what is the process to come back in? Because when I came back, I moved back from Arizona, like I had a truckload. I looked like the Beverly Hillbillies. Remember that TV show? Like how they had their truck packed all up? That's how I looked, because I had so much artwork and all my materials. But they said, okay, you can't come back in unless you have a negative test result. So I was lucky that I had made that call, and I made preparations to try to get a test before I could come back. Even though like I live by myself, I have my own studio, my own house, but going along with protocol, and the whole Pueblo agreed that, this is the best way to protect our elders. So we all went with a protocol and followed it. And, we're very lucky, even though we lost one of our cousins, Nathan Romero, like it was just hard to deal with it because it affected everybody. The Pueblos are like a big family. But just coming out of it is a lot more, everybody's excited to get back to what normal life. Hopefully that's soon, but I'm thankful that the Pueblos did shut down and really took care of one another. So that's a good thing to know, that we're all family and we all, love each other, and we're there for each other. So I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Absolutely. I can't imagine having that ranch all to yourself, by the way.
Yeah.
That's an incredible experience.
Yeah, the iconic ranch was amazing. Like just, all the different vibes that I got from, Don Wrights and all the people that have worked there. It's just like such a creative space, ceramics mecca basically. So we were there working, and like, had my hands there, woke up, worked in clay, and that was just an awesome part of the situation, the best that we could have done. And that I couldn't have been anywhere better than where I was at.
Pandemic paradise.
Right, exactly. You got to look at it in a good way, like with that kind of vibes, because it's a hard thing to go through.
Right. And so we are coming out of it, and I know that you are unveiling a new body of work in August.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, definitely. Like I'll be releasing a whole new body of work through the SAR, the School of Advanced Research. So I'm working with them, and it's going to be an online show, and it's going to be a pre-recorded event. So I think you could list the link on the bottom of this video. So if people are interested, they could go to it, and it's going to take place on August 10th, and that's in commemoration of the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. So that's when we'll release everything, and it's called Evolution Eventually. So the idea about it, our subjects are, it's about non-humans wearing masks that resemble a human face, and the evolution of what has just happened, of the masses required to wear personal protective equipment to minimize exposure to contamination, and non-humans wearing masks to protect themselves from humans. So it's kind of it's a cool subject and storyline of how people used to kind of hide themselves, or, you know, like all these different characters that will be unveiled, you will see them wearing masks, but upon like closer inspection, then you're like, oh my God, like, okay, like you pay attention to the titles of them, then you'll slowly start to realize what person I'm commenting on. So it's kind of like a game, and you'll see exactly how it all falls together. But yeah, I'm excited too for this one. And it's like, you know, again, the lead up to Indian Market, I hope everything goes well, but I'm choosing to stay online just to be safe and to use everything or work everything through my website virtually. So yeah, I hope everything goes really well. I mean, I know that, you know, all of the art is, a majority of them, that's their main income for the year. So um, through that, when we got hit last year and it got canceled, it was, you know, I was lucky that I already had my website built. I've been operating like and sales and stuff through the website, right? So I had experience with that. So what I worked with Swaya is to show all the different artists, like if they never had a website before, to like, you know, like to use a light box to photograph your jewelry or pottery, or you know, a tripod. Like you could use anything a lot in your household. Like I was showing them like how I used to just take a metal bar and tape, you know, gorilla tape my phone to it and use it as a tripod, and just get a simple poster board in the back to get a nice background for it and get the best photographs of your work. So just giving them tips of how to do that, not to be afraid to go online and to start selling your stuff that way, because it's eventually going to be that way. But yeah, I just wish everybody luck and health, and, you know, I hope everything goes well for Market this year.
So thank you for sharing that little brief preview. I'm really excited to see the work that comes out of that. So to kind of wrap up, I'd love to kind of do a quick tour of your studio space, which I know you are in now.
Yeah, of course, definitely. So yeah, let's go take a tour in there. So we will be right back.
So here we are in Virgil's studio, and I'll let him take it from here.
Yep, here's what you will see when you first walk into my studio. My good friend there watching the studio, the guard. Some of the glasswork that we did at the Corning Museum of Glass, and that's the wild spinach design element. There's that up there. Different types of high fire ceramics. He's a glitter bomb. Some of the collaborations I did with Daniel Romano, where he did the backdrop in metal with ceramic pieces there. Some of the work that I did at Wright's Ranch. Another collaboration with Augusta Smith. And this is a soda-fired piece, and it's carved. Some different types of kiln-fired pieces there. Some soda fire. Here's the translator glass piece that you've seen from Corning Museum of Glass on the slides.
Wow, it's so great to get a sense of scale of that piece.
Yeah, now you can see a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
This piece is really big.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Wow.
It was like I had created that at the Bemis School of Art in Colorado College at the Fine Arts Center,
Mhm.
and they had a huge kiln, so I tried to take advantage of that. But these are some of the textured pieces from the Wrights Ranch, and they really do look ancient.
Mhm.
And that whole style of the wood fire is just amazing to experience.
Yeah. Ancient, but very futuristic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Some of these pieces too. So there's different firing techniques in all of these ones using different types of glazes. Carving. This one, this guy looks like he's metal, but he is not. He is ceramic. Some of these, actually the wings are metal, but the main body is ceramic.
Wow.
It's just really so incredible the type of glaze work that you could get, in which like I was super excited because like working in traditional methods of materials, like we would never be able to do this, but to work with the characters and their types of textures and stuff, I was like, yes, I got metal, all these different types of gunmetal glazing, so that worked perfect
Yeah.
with those ones. Here's a bust of Pope. I'm really taking advantage, just playing with the metal looking types of glaze.
Mhm.
Some of these are wood fired, some are soda fired, but again, imagine just digging this up somewhere
Right.
and you don't know. It's like, wait, am I digging the future or the past or what is it?
Mhm. Yeah. Dig it up at White Sands in 2180.
Yeah. There's some of the characters that I sculpted into the plotters, the runners in the future. Again, like taking Don Wright's influence, like stabbing the clay and tearing it apart and relying on the texture. Here's a cool piece of Venusian soldier, a traditional piece. And I was experimenting of how to get 3D figure of it, and then a 2D version of how I paint on the pieces and
Mhm.
combine them together into one piece.
Wow. That's stunning.
You use the textures, like so hard to show on camera of
Mhm.
the textures and the shiny and the juiciness of all these different soda fire pieces are, how they look. It's pretty
Yeah.
incredible how that type of surface comes out. And
Yeah.
this piece was at the Museum of Contemporary Native Art. She's back home with me now.
Mhm.
Another version of the Hawaiian archers here. She's a glider character, and she's a runner in the future. So the runners in the future, I call them gliders. And the bat wing suits that people use to jump off buildings or
Mhm.
kind of skydive, and they could turn into a flying squirrel. So that's how the gliders are in the future. They're planning the revolt, but they're all gliding.
Wow.
With the Watchmen characters, and like using the soda fire technique, it's so amazing to see all the actual glass that forms in all the crevices.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Some of the mannequins that I just got back from Museum of Contemporary Native Art as well, the Venusian soldiers.
That was an incredible installation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still unpacking some of them and getting them ready to send to a different museum. A lot of the handbags and the leather work
Mhm.
we have, and you can find all of this stuff on my website, and it's just basically virgilortiz.com. Another fun thing that we'll be releasing soon, and it's a different way because like I normally release them seasonally, but now like during this time I'm just going to drop all the different garments together, so you'll see like hoodies with all these different new designs.
So these guys will be coming out pretty soon.
Incredible.
Today. So all in different colors. I mean, I'm not used to working in colors, but yeah, you'll see all these different new colors, the translator image.
Wow.
So that's exciting to look forward. I can't wait to come out of the fog and start getting back into shows and all the fun stuff, right?
Right.
We're able to do all that.
Wow.
Oh, there's a quick
Fantastic.
look of my studio. There's all the photographs and all the lithos over there.
This is a really remarkable space.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Wow. And I love that for one of the first pieces that you showed, the glass piece of the wild spinach. I think that's just really incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, a definitely iconic piece
Mhm.
of the wild spinach, and it's just wild to see them in glass form, whereas it's normally they're
Right.
3D or 2D.
Right. Cool. Well, Virgil, thank you so much for this. I think we are at a great place to end, unless there's anything else that you want to talk to MIAC audiences about.
No, I mean, if we don't, I know we don't get to talk live to each other, but you're welcome to contact me or direct message me on. I usually operate through Instagram a lot, and then share through all the different other social media. But you can just find me, and my handles is at Virgil Ortiz. And if you want to ask different questions or all the latest releases, like of the new garments or any of the new clay pieces or whatever I'm working on, you can see our behind the scenes stuff of how I create all these different sketches, or how I build some of my ceramics pieces. You could find on Instagram mostly. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me that way, or one of my team members will flag me if we get messages, so I'll be able to address them. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I hope everything goes well, and I can't wait to visit Clearly Indigenous at the MIAC Museum when it opens. It's going to be very fun, and just peace, blessings, and to everybody. Stay safe and protect one another.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.